Here we go, 2 days in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This was park number 2 on our attempt to visit all 63 national parks in 1 year. I drove in from Nashville on the evening of Sunday, October 5th, and I arrived at the Elkmont campground around 10 p.m. All I did that night was take a picture of the car in my camping spot before I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up around 7 a.m. to head to the visitor center. On the way there, I saw a nice overlook showing a beautiful view of the mountains with the morning sky hanging over. At the visitor center, I paid $5 for a day parking pass, or you can pay $15 for a whole week. There is no fee to enter the park, so I assume this is how they make their money. Once I had my parking pass, I headed to the Alum Cave Trailhead. The main parking area was full, so I parked a little bit further down the road and walked to the trailhead. If you want to get a good parking spot at the trailhead, I'd suggest getting there around 7:30 a.m. on a weekday or by 6:30 or 7 a.m. on a weekend. Once I was here, I got started on the Alum Cave Trail. The trail starts out by leading you over a couple of bridges that go over the Alum Cave Creek, which is what that flowing creek is called. Eventually, the bridges with 2 rails turn into 1-railed bridges that are much more slender, and although they are more dangerous to walk over, they are also more fun. This trail is a constant incline all the way up until you reach LeConte Lodge. There were some beautiful views of the surrounding mountains on the way up with the morning fog hanging over them. And I was hoping at this point that this fog would lift at some point so that the view from Myrtle Point at the top would be visible. So I had my fingers crossed. On the hike upward, you can see the trees are starting to develop their fall colors. I got there a bit too early for the best fall colors, but they were still pretty darn good when I went. There were many little openings in the trees where the surrounding mountains were visible. Eventually, I made it to Alum Cave. This is a spot where a lot of people will sit down and take a break, grab something to eat. I just wanted to get to the top, so I grabbed a couple shots of the surrounding view and continued my way upward. This is a very interesting hike all the way through. There are a lot of different views to look at. At a certain point, though, as I climbed upward, the surrounding views were blanketed by fog, and I couldn't really see much of those views anymore, but the ominous nature of the fog is still kind of cool. At this point, my hope was starting to wane a little bit that I would get a good view from Myrtle Point, but I thought if I took my time getting up there, the sun might eventually shine through the fog. Eventually, once I reached the top, the trail flattened out and led me to LeConte Lodge. Now, you can stay at LeConte Lodge, but you have to book very far in advance, and it books up almost instantly whenever the reservations are open. I used the restroom and then walked around a little bit to explore. These are the little cabins that you can rent and stay in, and then I made my way to Myrtle Point. The last time that I was up here at Myrtle Point, the sky was completely clear and the view of the mountains was stunning. But this time, unfortunately, everything was blanketed with fog. I did get a little bit of a view peeking through later on, but here is the view from the previous time we were at Myrtle Point, and this was in April of 2025. You can see it's just an epic view. This is one of my favorite views that I've ever seen in any national park. But still, this foggy, overcast view is still pretty cool, and it has a certain uniqueness to it. Eventually, though, on one side of the view, the wind started to blow the fog away and the sun shone through to reveal a beautiful view of the mountains there in the distance. And although I wish that I had been able to see the full 360-degree view of the mountains, I really appreciated this unique view with the wind blowing the wispy clouds in front of the mountains. I stayed here for maybe an hour and grabbed some snacks. I actually took a short nap here at the top while I was waiting for the sun to shine through some more, but eventually I decided that the sky was probably just not going to clear up fully, so I headed back down. On the way down, though, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the fog had lifted in a lot of the areas where the mountains were not visible before. Here is that spot where the mountains were completely blocked with fog at this little drop-off, and now I had this beautiful view in front of me. The hike down is inevitably much quicker than the hike up because it is all downhill. When I made it back to Alum Cave. The sun had come out and was shining over everything. The sunshine seemed to enhance all of the already beautiful fall colors. There are many ways to get to Mount LeConte, including the Rainbow Falls Trail and the Bullhead Trail, which we have done before, but this one is the most popular, and you can see why. It gives you a lot of bang for your buck. Eventually, I made it down the trail and made my way back to my car. From here, I returned to the Sugarlands Visitor Center to get a brand new National Park passport and to get my stamp for it. For the previous park I visited, Mammoth Cave, it was during the government shutdown, and so I was unable to get a new passport there, but there was somebody there with a stamp, so I stamped a piece of paper to tape into this passport. But there you see, October 6th, 2025. And the Sugarlands Visitor Center is actually really cool, especially if you have kids. They have many different displays of animals and plants that are native to the area. And again, there's the date and time on my phone. On the way back to my campground at Elkmont, I stopped at that same overlook and filmed a quick magic trick. Here you go, hope you enjoy. I gave the cards a quick shuffle here and then cut the cards with one hand to an ace. Then another cut to the ace of clubs this time. One more cut, that's the ace of diamonds. And one final cut. Oop, that's not an ace, that's the three of diamonds. But just a snap. And there it is, ace of spades. Anyway, once I got to the campground, I was tired and just wanted to relax. So that's what I did. I had some dinner, did my nightly routine, and then laid down. One note is this campground, at least in the area I was staying, did not have any showers, so you might want to have a shower bag on you. The next morning, I woke up around 6 and was heading to the Ramsey Cascades trailhead around 7. Again, here's a nice sunrise view from that overlook area. I got my parking tag from the visitor center, admired the sun rising from the parking lot there, and then I made my way to Ramsey Cascades. This is a video of me driving through Gatlinburg on my way to the Ramsey Cascades. The main road to Ramsey Cascades is a gravel road, and in some areas it's not in great shape. You can see me avoiding some potholes here, but no matter what type of car you have, you should be able to make it down this road pretty easily, as long as you pay attention. I saw some wild turkeys crossing the road on the way there, and eventually I made it to the Ramsey Cascades trailhead. After crossing a couple of initial bridges to start the hike, the trail mainly just looked like this for the first mile and a half, with the occasional view of the creek running beside. Eventually it got a bit more interesting and led over some one-armed bridges, I'll call them. Now this hike was not easy. I would put it on the same level of difficulty as the Alum Cave to Mount LeConte hike. At a certain point I saw a huge tree that I had to take a video with. It reminded me of the redwoods out in California. I will say that while this hike and the Mount LeConte hike are both pretty difficult, I saw people of all ages and sizes on the trail. Just make sure to be prepared and start early if you think it's going to take you a while. I saw many older people slowly working their way up, but eventually they made it to the top. As I got closer and closer to the waterfall, the trail became more and more interesting, and at a certain point I was hopping from rock to rock across the water until I made it to the falls. Upon reaching the falls, you will see a sign that warns you to control your children, because 4 children have died here, and I can attest that it does get very slippery on the rocks here. The waterfall itself is stunning. I don't know how much justice the camera does for it, but this is one of the most beautiful waterfalls I've ever seen. I carefully made my way down to get a close-up view of the falls before making my way back to a rock where I sat for a little while to enjoy the view. One other hiker had left the falls to go back down just before I got here, so I had the entire place to myself for around 30 minutes before anybody else showed up. This is a perfect place to relax for a little bit, grab something to eat, and enjoy the surroundings. I even got a video of all of the fall foliage surrounding the Cascades. This was my first time hiking to the Ramsey Cascades, and I would say this has to be my second favorite spot in the Smokies, right after Myrtle Point. Once I wrapped up here, I headed right back down the trail to my car and then drove back to Nashville. This wraps up my 2 days in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Park number 3 is Great Basin National Park in Nevada, and that will be the next video coming up soon. Bye.